In a global dessert-making competition to choose the world's best pastry chef, the contest reaches the final round. The chefs are required to create giant dessert sculptures, and each one starts shaping their creations into animals. They must transport their desserts to the judges' area, but suddenly, one team struggles to move their sculpture and it falls on the chef, killing him. The chef, in tears before dying, says that all he ever wanted was to become the world's best pastry chef. But suddenly, strange lights appear, and he hears a voice telling him he will get another chance and that his new name will be Bess Mortland. Suddenly, we see a small child crying with his father and mother in another world. We learn that the child's father is Casserole, the lord of Mortland's feudal territory. He was originally a farmer working the land but, with the help of the local residents, expanded the farmland until it became a fiefdom consisting of 3 villages, each with 40 people. Bess is now 9 years old in this new life, with 5 older sisters. His father is training him in swordsmanship, but he faces one major problem. Their fiefdom does not produce sugar, making it difficult for him to create desserts. Then Sheets, the chief worker, announces that this year's bean harvest will be exceptionally large. This is because Bess advised them to sprinkle lime on the soil to improve crop quality. But there is bad news. Efforts to eliminate bandits in the rich region have failed, and about 50 of them are heading toward the fiefdom, expected to arrive in 2 months. This means all the crops they worked so hard for are at risk of being destroyed. Sheets suggests gathering the villagers to fend off the bandits, but Bess realizes that even if they muster all the men in the territory, they will only have about 30 fighters. This means they can only delay the bandits for a while, but if they engage in a prolonged battle, they will surely lose. However, Bess tells himself that he won't let anything stand in his way or prevent him from achieving his goal of creating the land of desserts, as beans and wheat are essential ingredients in making sweets. Later, Lord Casserole tells Bess and his mother that he will conduct Bess's consecration ceremony. His mother thinks it's too early for such a thing, but Casserole insists that Bess is intelligent and far superior in swordsmanship to other boys his age. The consecration ceremony is traditionally held when a child reaches maturity, usually between the ages of 13 and 15. Bess's mother is worried and shocked by this, but she listens to Casserole and asks Joserin, Bess's sister, to help prepare the ceremony. For 3 days, they bid farewell to Bess, and on the 4th day, he says goodbye to his family and friends and leaves with his father for the capital. His father uses his teleportation magic, disappearing from the fiefdom in an instant and reappearing in the capital. Bess is thrilled and amazed by the variety of ingredients available in the city. He thinks to himself that he can now make many sweets using these ingredients. His father tells him that if he successfully passes the consecration ceremony, he will get him anything he wants. Bess is fascinated by apples and learns that in this world, they are called pelka. He asks his father if they can plant them in their fiefdom, and Casserole is pleased to hear this because he sees Bess as someone eager to collect relics from other lands to develop their territory. To him, this is the mark of a true feudal lord. But for Bess, his only concern is using apples and these ingredients to make desserts. He keeps imagining all the sweets he could make with apples and dreams of inheriting the fiefdom to produce countless confections. Meanwhile, his father believes that when Bess inherits the fiefdom, he will strengthen it and build a powerful army. They then arrive at the ceremonial site where they meet the priest. Lord Casserole tells him that he wants Bess's consecration to be performed today. The priest is surprised and remarks that Bess seems too young, but Casserole reassures him that if he did not believe Bess was ready, he wouldn't have brought him. The priest agrees to proceed with the ceremony. Inside, we learn that this ritual is meant to measure a person's magical strength. The priest seats Bess in a chair, binds him, blinds him, and gives him a strange liquid to drink before leaving him alone in complete darkness for many hours. This is the only way to reveal a person's magical power. After a day and a half, Casserole tells the priest that the process has taken too long, but the priest responds that they cannot release Bess until the glow from the device subsides. He explains that the prolonged time suggests Bess has immense magical energy. Casserole grows deeply concerned about Bess, wondering what might have happened to him. But Bess, meanwhile, is simply lost in thoughts of making desserts with apples, focused solely on figuring out a way to obtain sugar so he can create endless sweets. He finally wakes from these dreams to the sound of his father shouting his name, telling him he has been in this state for 2 days. Bess feels strange and different. The priest informs him that he has acquired an unheard of power. Lord Casserole thanks the priest and hands him a bag of money as a token of gratitude before taking Bess to the market to buy him the apples he wanted. However, the priest is displeased with the silver coins he received, thinking to himself that this will not be enough to silence him. He is visibly upset and harbors ill intentions toward Bess and his father. Meanwhile, bandits attack a nearby fiefdom and destroy it, meaning they are advancing much faster than anticipated. This means they will reach Mortland sooner than the 2 months previously estimated. Lord Casserole orders Bess to gather the leaders of each village and summon his workers, Quantra and Glassage. We learn that Lord Casserole has closed off the 2 smaller villages, burying their wells with soil, and ordered all the villagers to move to the larger village to lure the bandits there. The goal is to avoid scattered fighting. The villagers start building shelters and stockpiling food, but Bess realizes that all the soldiers are actually farmers with no combat experience. If they remain untrained, they will surely lose the battle. Then, Bess's friends, Mark and Lumi, arrive and promise to help him in any way they can. Bess asks them to gather small stones and tells them to report any distant noises they hear immediately. They follow his instructions and begin collecting stones. Suddenly, they hear a distant noise and quickly inform Bess that the bandits have arrived. They rush to warn the villagers, who immediately remove the bridge and close the village gates. Fear and tension spread among the villagers. But then Lord Casserole arrives and declares that if the bandits break in, they will kill everyone and destroy the village. In other words, there is nothing left to lose. Their only option is to win. Lord Casserole continues to rally them, turning their hesitation and fear into courage and hope. He assigns positions to Quantra and Glassage, instructing each on their roles, and tells Sheets that he expects the bandits to attack at dawn since they lack the advantage at night, unfamiliar with the terrain. But Casserole predicts they will attack at night despite the disadvantage because they are running out of food and will want to strike quickly. He asks Bess for his opinion, and Bess says the best solution is to determine the bandits' food supplies and provisions so they can make the best decision. He explains that just like a pastry chef must know all the ingredients and details like temperature before beginning, they need full knowledge before making a move. Lord Casserole decides to take Sheets and go on a reconnaissance mission first. He tells Bess that he will be in charge while he is gone. Bess then asks Mark to go to Quantra at the Western Canal and tells Lumi to instruct Glassage to prepare arrows and fire them as soon as he sees Casserole and Sheets returning. Bess does this to guide his father and Sheets back to the village since it will be dark. Mark asks why Lord Casserole doesn't use his teleportation magic, and Bess explains that the spell has a weight limit, meaning they can't transport their horses along with them. Lord Casserole approaches the bandits while Sheets uses his magic to scout ahead and determines that the bandits have cavalry among them. He counts a total of 70. They also see that the bandits have villagers held as hostages and slaves. When the bandit leader learns that the 2 smaller villages are empty and the wells are buried, he says he expected this outcome. But before he can finish speaking, Casserole and Sheets ambush them, killing a few. However, they realize they cannot take them all alone and must lure them toward the village. Some bandits fall for the trap and chase after them, but the leader sees through the deception. As Casserole and Sheets near the village, they see the arrows Bess had ordered to be fired toward the western section. They don't understand why Bess did this, as it both guides them and reveals their position to the bandits, which seems counterproductive. However, Bess has a plan. As soon as the bandits reach a certain point, it is revealed that he had arranged for all the village children to participate, using slings to launch stones at the enemy. The children are the best with slings since they play with them every day. When the bandits step into the marked area, Bess commands the children to fire stones and flaming projectiles, killing a large number of them. But eventually, the bandit leader and his men manage to break into the village, and no one is able to stop them. The leader notices that it's the children who are attacking them with stones and moves to attack them. He raises his sword and slashes Bess's arm before grabbing him, intending to kill him. He orders his men to kill all the children. But then Bess gets an idea. He uses his magic to replicate an injury from one of the bandits, who had a severe burn on his face. He applies the same burn to all the remaining bandits, causing them to fall in agony. With that, the battle is won, and Mortland's fiefdom emerges victorious. They also manage to capture some of the bandits and start retrieving food from their storage. Lord Casserole decides to send the captured bandits to the rich province, presenting them as if they were the ones who won the battle. This allows the Count to save face after his previous loss. Additionally, this ensures that they receive compensation for the expenses of the campaign and the damages incurred when they abandoned the 2 smaller villages. Casserole then distributes rewards to the soldiers in recognition of their bravery. Glassage receives a spear and a silver piece, while Mark and Lumi each receive a sword and a sack of barley. Bess accompanies them to help carry their rewards home as they struggle to lift the barley sacks. Mark's mother is overjoyed to see him return safely, and Lumi's grandfather hosts a grand feast to celebrate their victory, inviting all the neighbors. When they see Bess, they immediately ask him to join the celebration. Bess joins them, and everyone feels proud of him, believing he will be an excellent feudal lord in the future. But all Bess can think about is apple pie and what ingredients he will need. Meanwhile, Mark and Lumi decide to check on the hostages since they are assistants to the future feudal lord. When they arrive, the guards refuse to let them in. So, they distract the guards with thrown stones and sneak inside while they are gone. Inside, they meet Mark, who recognizes the sword belonging to the bandit leader. The leader tells Mark that if he wants to learn the truth, he must step closer so that Lumi doesn't overhear. When Mark moves in, the leader suddenly strikes him, taking him hostage in an attempt to escape. One of the guards rushes to inform the soldiers and Bess about what happened, reporting that Lumi was also injured. Bess arrives at the bandits' location and sees that the leader has taken Mark and fled. He orders the villagers to take Lumi to the doctor, mounts his horse, and sets off in pursuit of the bandit leader. He reassures himself that the traps they set in the east are still in place. When Lord Casserole hears what happened, he becomes furious that Bess went alone. He decides to take Sheets with him, but Sheets suggests that it would be better if he went alone, staying behind with Glassage instead. If news of the escape spreads, it will demoralize the villagers, and Casserole's role should be to reassure them. Casserole agrees with this reasoning, and Sheets and Quantra head off in pursuit. Along the way, the bandit leader falls into one of the eastern traps. Bess catches up and confronts him. As they fight, Bess recalls his father's swordsmanship lessons. They exchange blows, but Bess struggles to keep up, and eventually, his sword shatters. When Sheets and Quantra arrive at the scene, they find only Bess's broken sword. They take it and return, uncertain of what to tell Casserole. But when they open the door, they are shocked to find Bess sitting on his mother's lap, alive and well. Casserole, in disbelief, tells him that they should have at least encountered him on his way back. Bess then admits that he copied his father's magic onto himself and used it to escape with Mark from the bandit leader. He explains that his magic allows him to replicate anything. His father scolds him, warning him never to tell anyone that he can replicate spells or use them in front of anyone. He tells Bess that if he ever misuses this magic, he could end up killing himself, teleporting deep underground or to a faraway place without meaning to. After a while, Lord Casserole tells Sheets that if people find out Bess can copy magical spells, they will try to exploit him as a secret weapon. He adds that he wants to get rid of the bandit leader before anyone discovers this dangerous secret. The next day, Bess visits Mark, finding him sitting alone, upset. He tells him that none of this was his fault and that it wouldn't have happened if he had listened to Lumi. He explains that guilt won't change anything and suggests they go together to apologize to Lumi for what happened. Mark listens to him, and they go to see Lumi. Bess leaves them and heads to the kitchen to prepare his apple desserts. He gathers his ingredients to make an apple pie, carefully preparing everything with expert precision. Meanwhile, Mark apologizes to Lumi, telling her that everything was his fault. But Lumi responds that he doesn't need to apologize to her. The real blame lies with the bandits. As they sit together, they suddenly catch the aroma of Bess's apple pie. Bess tells them he made it to help Lumi recover and to lift Mark's spirits as well. When they take their first bite, they are stunned by how delicious it is, exclaiming that they have never tasted anything so sweet. Bess then gives them apples with honey. A little while later, Glassage, Lumi's father, enters. Mark assumes he will be scolded for what happened to Lumi, but instead, Glassage jokes with him, saying that Mark will have to marry Lumi in the future to make up for what he did. When Glassage takes a bite of Bess's apple pie, he is amazed and can't believe Bess was the one who made it. Some time later, they learn that Casserole is in desperate need of money. The losses from abandoning the two villages were costly, and reopening them requires a significant sum. Redigging the wells, rebuilding the destroyed homes, and securing enough food for the winter have drained the fiefdom's supplies. Everyone starts thinking of ways to raise funds. Bess suggests that his father and mother ask their families for help, but Lord Casserole tells him that they cut ties with their families long ago. This was because Casserole was poor, and no one had approved of their marriage. They had chosen to elope and marry far away because they loved each other. Later, Bess tells Mark and Lumi about this. They suggest he make and sell apple pies, telling him that people will love them and he won't be able to keep up with demand. However, Bess argues that this isn't a practical solution. If he wants to make a good profit, he will need a massive supply of apples, which he can't obtain. Lumi then suggests he use his duplication magic to find a way to make a lot of money. Bess considers her words, recalling how he used to discuss new dessert ideas with his colleagues. He thinks to himself that 3 minds are better than one, and they might help him find a great solution. He asks Mark and Lumi to draw something on the ground. Mark sketches himself fighting a dinosaur, while Lumi draws an apple and an apple pie like the one Bess made. Bess then uses his magic and successfully copies the drawings onto their hands. Both of them are thrilled and praise his magical skill. Lumi asks why the drawings don't fade. Bess explains that they last for 3 days before disappearing, but if he copies them onto a tree, they will never fade. Lumi then asks if he can copy anything other than drawings in the form of an image. Bess is surprised by her question, but the moment he hears it, he gets excited and calls her a genius. Because of her, he has found a great solution. He quickly leaves them and rushes to his parents. Excited, he tells them that he has found a way to make a lot of money. He picks up a wooden plank and copies an image of his mother onto it. He explains his idea, reminding them that in the past, he had to attend banquets in the capital to help Josephine find a suitor. At that time, marriage arrangements required a father to bring his daughter to a grand event until someone noticed her and proposed. He tells his father that, thanks to his teleportation ability, he can travel easily, but other fathers don't have such magic. They have to travel the normal way, which costs them a lot of money and is dangerous. Instead, by using his magic to copy images onto wood, he can replicate a picture of any girl and show it to potential suitors, saving them the trouble of traveling and cutting costs. Casserole is impressed by the idea, realizing they can make a great deal of money while also ensuring that people believe Bessa's only magical ability is creating images. Some time later, they travel to the Rich province, which consists of 50 small villages. Upon arrival, they meet the ruler of Rich, a woman named Belial Rich. She is the daughter of Count Rich the Elder and is meant to govern until the rightful heir comes of age. However, the heir recently died before reaching the legal ruling age. They sit down together and share 2 cups of tea. When Bess tries one of the biscuits served to them, he doesn't like the taste. Belial notices this and is surprised because all the children usually enjoy their desserts. She then compliments Casserole, calling him a great leader for transforming barren lands into vast farmlands. Casserole tells her that he achieved all of this with Bessa's guidance and advice. Belial assumes he is being modest, as she finds it hard to believe that a child could have such expertise. Bess then tells her what happened recently, how hundreds of bandits attacked their fiefdom, forcing him and the other children to defend their land, even putting their lives on the line. He explains that after interrogating the captured bandits, they discovered that they were from Rich province. Belial is taken aback but decides to feign ignorance, replying, "Really? This is the first time I've heard such a thing." Bess responds that if she doubts their claim, they can hand over some of the captured bandits who confessed. He adds that if she still doesn't remember, they will be forced to report the matter to the royal family, which would lead to an official investigation. Belial retorts that they have no proof that the bandits were from Rich. Casserole then presents a sword bearing the Rich fiefdom's emblem, stating that they found it in the possession of one of the bandits. Belial is on the verge of exploding with anger, realizing that she is trapped and unable to deny the truth. But Bess interrupts Belial's thoughts, telling her that he understands her situation and knows she doesn't want this news to spread. He adds that he would be very happy if they were compensated for the losses they suffered because of this situation. Belial replies that she thinks 100 gold pieces should be enough, but Bess tells her that this amount is too little compared to their losses. Belial slowly raises the price bit by bit until it reaches 150 gold pieces. Bess agrees, while Casserole sits between them, completely useless, letting Bess handle everything. At this point, Belial reevaluates her opinion of Bess, realizing that Casserole wasn't being modest when he said Bess was responsible for all the development that had taken place. But she also tells herself that 150 gold pieces are insignificant compared to the risk of losing the king's trust. In the end, they shake hands, and Belial admits that she underestimated Bess because of his young age, but he proved otherwise. Bess replies that he isn't upset and apologizes if he acted rudely, asking for her forgiveness for not bringing her a gift. However, he has something prepared for her and prints her image onto a handkerchief. The moment Belial sees the handkerchief, she is greatly impressed. Some time later, Lord Casserole and Bess travel to the royal capital, where they meet Duke Cadlec, commander of the Royal Central Army. He is hosting a grand banquet to celebrate his heir reaching adulthood. Cadlec introduces them to his grandson, Squall, who is extremely nervous about meeting a hero like Casserole. Bess steps forward and introduces himself to Duke Cadlec, who is immediately impressed by his courage and talent, unlike other children. In contrast, his grandson, who is older than Bess, struggles to carry himself with such confidence. Cadlec tells Bess that he has heard he reached adulthood early and has already awakened his magical abilities. He asks Bess to demonstrate his magic. Bess takes a piece of cloth from a passing waiter and prints an image of Petra, the daughter of Margrave Hoberek, onto it. He presents it as a gift for Squall from Lord Hoberek. Casserole explains that before coming here they visited Hoberek, who asked them to do this. Since the Margraviate is constantly at war with its neighbors, the Margrave couldn't attend the banquet, so he requested this favor instead. Bess notices that Squall comments on how beautiful Petra looks. Bess then tells him that Petra's coming-of-age banquet will be held next month and that Lord Hoberek would be pleased if they attended. Duke Cadlec immediately refuses, knowing that this is a setup to arrange Squall's marriage to Petra. But before he can say anything else, Squall interrupts him and says they agree to go. He would be delighted to attend. Duke Cadlec asks how he plans to travel there. Bess tells him that his father would have no problem using his teleportation magic to take them there. Squall is thrilled and asks Lord Casserole to transport him when the time comes. At that moment, Casserole is seething with anger because his foolish grandson is getting them entangled in a marriage arrangement. However, in the end, he has no choice but to accept. He announces loudly to everyone present that they will attend Petra's banquet next month. Later, Squall approaches Bess and asks what things Petra likes. Bess replies that he has only met her once, but he noticed that she loved the biscuits he made. Squall then asks if Bess knows how to make sweets. Bess responds that he enjoys making desserts and is better at it than anything else. But Squall cuts him off, saying they will discuss that later, and asks if Bess can make another image of Petra for him. A long time later, Bess enters Casserole's room with letters from Duke Cadlec and Margrave Hoberek. When Casserole opens them, he finds that Squall and Petra are now officially engaged. The letters also contain an offer of 30 gold pieces if they can protect Petra during her coming-of-age ceremony in the capital. This is because many people oppose this marriage. Now, their task is to transport Petra to the capital and provide security for her there. Sheets warns that a traitor could infiltrate the guards and harm Petra. He suggests rejecting the mission, but Casserole refuses, saying that nothing will elevate their standing more than gaining the trust of two of the kingdom's most powerful families. He insists they must accept if they want their fiefdom to grow. He also explains that the mission won't be too difficult since neither family has publicly announced the engagement yet. Everyone starts brainstorming the safest place for Petra. Bess suggests that there is no safer place than the leadership exam chamber used for the coming-of-age trials. It is highly secure, with only one entrance. Since Petra will have to enter the chamber anyway for her ceremony, they will be solving two problems at once. Everyone agrees that Bess's idea is brilliant. Not only will they keep Petra safe, but they won't need to hire additional knights for protection, allowing them to keep all 30 gold pieces. In the end, Bess hands the financial records to his father and tries to slip away quickly. But Lord Casserole stops him after noticing that the records show purchases of apples and sugar, things Bess had bought for making desserts. Enraged, Casserole scolds him for wasting so much money and temporarily cuts off his allowance. Later, Bess and Casserole travel to Lord Hoberek's estate to escort Petra to the capital. Their plan is to take Petra to a location within the Margravial borders under the pretense of conducting her coming-of-age tests there. However, in reality, they will use Casserole's teleportation magic to transport her to the capital. Once there, she will enter the secured chamber under Casserole's protection until the ceremony is completed. On the way, Lord Hoberek tells Casserole that those who wish to harm his daughter have started making moves. He is counting on Casserole to keep Petra safe. Casserole promises to do everything in his power to ensure her safety. As soon as they step out of the carriage at the first test site, enemies hidden in the fields emerge and attack them. One of the attackers manages to reach the inside of the carriage, declaring that he will kill Petra and her sister Licorice. Bess draws his sword, determined to defend them until Lord Casserole arrives, and together, they manage to kill several of the attackers while the rest flee. Finally, they reach the test site and descend into the underground chamber. When Licorice nearly trips, Bess grabs her hand and reassures her, saying, "Don't worry, I'll help you down the stairs." At that moment, Licorice begins to think that she admires Bess. Not only is he intelligent and strong, but he also saved her. Moreover, he doesn't compare her to her sister. She realizes she was foolish for being jealous of her sister, who got married first simply because she was more beautiful. She recalls how she had spoken to Bess rudely before, yet he had always treated her kindly. After a while, they arrive at the test chamber, and Petra asks, "Is this the place where I'm supposed to be?" Bess tells her that his father will use teleportation magic to take them to the royal capital since the ceremony will be held there. Petra is surprised and asks how they will teleport from here to the capital using magic. Bess reassures her, saying, "Don't worry at all, we know exactly what we're doing." They enter the room, and Bess instructs them to stand in a line and hold hands. Lord Casserole successfully teleports them to the capital. There, Licorice and Petra are stunned that they actually arrived, and Bess greets them, saying, "Welcome to the royal capital." Meanwhile, we see a man giving a gang a mission to kidnap Petra, with a reward of 10 gold pieces. The gang members are excited, except for one, who questions him. "You're not seriously asking us to kidnap an ordinary girl. She must be from the nobility." The man replies that the girl is Petra, daughter of Margrave Haberek, who is soon to marry a member of Duke Cadlec's family. Understanding the assignment, the gang leader gathers his men and sets out to complete the mission. Later, the gang members ask their leader, "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" They remark that their client is just a former noble trying to reclaim his status. But the gang leader explains that his real motives are different. First, he wants to disgrace Duke Cadlec, as it would be humiliating for him to allow his grandson's fiancée to be kidnapped on her wedding day. Second, he plans to present himself as Petra's rescuer, restoring his noble status, and possibly even marrying her. To the common people, it would simply be the story of a kidnapped noblewoman who married the man who saved her, a tale everyone would love. Back at the test site, numerous guards surround the area. Bess is surprised by the sheer number of guards. Casserole explains that Margrave Haberek likely deployed them. Bess comments, "A small family like ours could never afford to gather all these men." Meanwhile, Petra appears troubled. Licorice asks, "What's wrong?" Petra admits that she still can't believe all of this is happening and that she's really getting married. Bess steps in to reassure her, telling her that Squall is a kind person and that she will be happy with him. Petra agrees, saying, "You're right. He's really handsome and seems kind." Bess is overjoyed because his magic trick worked. It successfully made them both eager to meet each other. Then, he drifts off into thought, imagining himself making desserts again. After that, Petra proceeds with the ceremony. Suddenly, Sheets bursts through the door, with Glassage following close behind. Sheets calls out to Casserole. Casserole asks, "What's the situation at the Duke's estate?" Sheets reports that many unexpected guests have arrived, among them, rulers from distant fiefdoms. Casserole explains that merging the two families into one creates a powerful alliance, attracting many people who want to witness it and benefit from it. Sheets adds that Quantra is already at the Duke's estate, keeping an eye on things. If anything happens, he will alert them. Casserole then turns to Bess and gives him an important task. Since Petra's coming-of-age ceremony will take a long time, he asks Bess to help Lady Licorice calm down and wait in the guest room as she looks exhausted. Bess obliges, reassuring her as he extends his hand, inviting her to rest in the guest room. As they walk away, Sheets teases him. Bess glares at him and says, "Shut up, you idiot. Do you think I'm like you?" Casserole, irritated, scolds Sheets, saying, "Stop talking to my son like that, you animal." Meanwhile, we cut back to the lair of the man orchestrating Petra's kidnapping. He declares that everything is finally coming together, and soon, the girl will be in his hands after the ceremony. It is revealed that his entire scheme is motivated by revenge against Duke Cadlec. Later, the commander of the Central Army's soldiers arrives to escort Lady Petra to Duke Cadlec. Margrave Haberek thanks him for the warm reception. They board the carriage together, with Petra beside him. Casserole tells Sheets that the mission is almost over. All that's left is waiting for Licorice. And after the two of them finished, he took them and went home. But Casserole said to Sheets, if the security personnel managed to clear out all the bad people, there would still be a percentage of danger. We must stay very alert. Sheets replied, "I'm not worried about anything except Bess." Casserole responded, "Don't worry, they have the escort Kyra from Licorice with them anyway." On the other side, Bess asked the escort, "Why are you in the room?" She replied that her duty was to protect Miss Licorice. Bess said, "I thought you would go with Miss Petra for her engagement." She answered, "No, I will stay here for Licorice, not for Petra." Bess felt embarrassed but let it pass and said, "Then please, have a seat." She replied, "No, I'm comfortable like this. Mind your own business." Bess felt uneasy inside but kept laughing out of embarrassment. She looked at him angrily, making Bess afraid of her. Licorice said, "Calm down a bit, your expressions are terrifying." But Bess was confused as he suddenly heard an explosion. Sheets, Casserole, and Glassage were all shocked by the sound. Suddenly, a magical circle appeared in the room where Bess and Licorice were. Both were stunned, not knowing what was happening until they fell into a black hole. Kyra didn't manage to fall with them and kept calling out for Licorice. In that moment, the three entered the room, shocked to find a black hole in the middle of it. Casserole asked, "What happened?" She told him, "The two of them fell into that hole." Casserole said, "The problem now is that we don't know where this hole leads. It's extremely dangerous to follow them. Clearly, experienced sorcerers are behind this." Casserole ordered Sheets to go to Cadlec and explain everything to him, making sure that Margrave Huberic knew what had happened to his daughter. Suddenly, Casserole jumped into the hole, descending gradually until he reached the ground. Bess woke up and saw Licorice tied up in front of him. He was shocked, not knowing where he was. The gang leader said, "Finally, you're awake. I've been waiting for you for an hour. But you're an obedient boy, so I will let you go soon." Bess replied, "I don't want you to release me. I want to know why you kidnapped us." The leader answered, "I don't have to tell you anything." Bess wondered if this man was the one who used the magic, but he tried to reassure himself, thinking, "Surely, my father will find out where I am and come for me." But then he wondered why they had kidnapped him. Despite him being the heir of a poor ruler, they wouldn't benefit from him in any way. He realized that their target was actually Miss Licorice. The gang leader then ordered one of his men to keep an eye on them and went to Bess, warning him not to try escaping. He said, "If you try to escape or make a wrong move, I'll get rid of you easily." Bess looked at Licorice and told himself that he had to protect her. Meanwhile, Casserole reached the end of the tunnel he had been running through. When he emerged outside, he was confused, not knowing where he was. He was frustrated because he couldn't find any traces. On the other side, Licorice woke up, and Bess tried to reassure her, saying, "Don't be afraid." But Licorice was truly scared and couldn't control her emotions. Bess kept trying to calm her down until she relaxed a little. She asked herself why she felt safe with him. The boy guarding them was watching and mocking Bess, saying, "Do you think you're a man or something?" Both Bess and Licorice looked at him without saying anything. Bess thought to himself that he should be cautious with these people. He asked the boy, "What exactly do you plan to do with us?" The boy replied, "I don't know what will happen to you, but I know what will happen to the young lady. As for you, we might kill you or throw you into the streets. Either way, it won't make a difference to us." Bess started crying and said, "You could get 200 gold coins if you don't kill me." The boy was surprised by what he heard. Bess realized that someone had hired them to kidnap Licorice. He continued his act and said, "I am the heir to a noble family." Licorice was astonished by his performance. The gang boy said, "If you're lying, I will personally kill you." Bess figured out that a noble was behind this abduction and that they were likely in his palace. He deduced this from the expensive engravings on the walls. But from the condition of the place, he realized that this noble was a former ruler who had been stripped of his title since no one had maintained his house for a long time, probably for about 10 years. It was evident that this boy had a special talent, and that Huberic or Cadlic were likely responsible for his downfall a decade ago. He recalled the list they had, containing the names of potential troublemakers at the wedding, and he began thinking. The only name that matched the description was the former Duke Lemaire. Bess then untied a strap from his jacket, used duplication magic on it, and transferred the name of their location to his father. Meanwhile, Sheets returned to Casserole and told him that none of the soldiers cared because the engagement ceremony was the priority. Kyra got angry and asked Casserole, "How can you be this calm when your son is kidnapped?" Glassage snapped at her, saying, "Do you even know who you're talking to, woman? Of course, he's worried." But Casserole silenced him and said he wasn't as worried as expected because he knew Bess would be working on a plan. Just as he finished speaking, he received the cloth piece Bess had sent. He read what was written on it and realized that they were being held in Lemaire's palace and that the suspect was Duke Lemaire. Casserole ordered Sheets to gather as many soldiers as possible. Sheets asked Casserole to transport him to the Duke's palace first using his magic. Meanwhile, the gang leader entered the room, furious because he realized they had kidnapped the wrong girl. When he approached her, Bess quickly moved to protect Licorice, but the gang leader struck him, sending him flying. It turned out that Lemaire had told them they had kidnapped the wrong girl and that he wouldn't pay them. Meanwhile, Petra's wedding was proceeding perfectly. Bess realized that their original target had been Petra. The gang leader then drew his sword and told his man that they had to kill them to leave no evidence of their actions. Licorice was terrified and called for help. Suddenly, Bess freed himself and slashed the leader's hand with his sword. The leader was astonished by what Bess had done. Bess reassured Licorice, saying, "Don't be afraid, I'm with you." Bess then stood face to face with the gang leader, who was shocked by Bess's abilities. The moment he let his guard down for a second, Bess had managed to free himself and even defeat the boy with the leader. The leader realized he was in a very dangerous situation. Just then, he heard approaching footsteps. It was Casserole, leading all the soldiers he could gather. They all moved toward the palace to rescue Bess and Licorice. Then we return to the gang leader, who tells Bess that the only solution now is for him to escape. Bess replies, "Do you think I'll let you escape that easily?" At that moment, Casserole and his men enter the room where Bess is, and the gang leader is shocked, not knowing who these people are. Bess reassures Casserole that he is fine, while Sheets moves to free Licorice. Casserole and Bess approach the leader, surrounding him. The leader thinks to himself that the situation is no longer in his favor and that the room he had designed for children to prevent them from escaping is now the one he himself cannot escape from. Bess tells him, "You won't be able to escape from me." Then, the leader uses his magic again, creating a large gap to escape through. Just as Bess is about to go after him, Casserole stops him, saying, "Stay here, don't go after him. This situation isn't even worth all this effort. As long as Licorice is safe, the mission is over." Casserole then turns to Bess and tells him he was very worried about him. At the same time, Sheets arrives with the guards he brought from the Duke's place, only to find that Bess is safe and has already been rescued. One of the guards approaches Licorice to check on her, and Casserole tells him to take her to her father. The guard then carries her and leaves. Bess asks his father who was behind all this. His father replies that they arrested Duke Lemaire along with the rest of the gang members involved in the abduction. He tells him, "He tried to escape, but not on my watch. I'm too strong for that." It is revealed that Lemaire's family had, during the war, leaked a great deal of information to the enemy army, leading the kingdom to strip them of their noble title. Casserole tells Bess, "The lesson you should learn is that the actions of a single feudal lord can destroy the future of an entire family." Just then, one of the Duke's soldiers arrives and tells Casserole that they need him to come and explain the events to the Duke. Casserole tells Sheets, "You'll handle the reports." Sheets is frustrated by the order, but Casserole tells him, "The gang leader escaped, and we will be faster than you." The two of them leave, leaving Sheets alone. Casserole and Bess walk together, and Bess asks Casserole how the man managed to escape under the circumstances they had put him in. Bess tells him that when he approached the hole, he didn't sense much power from the leader. Casserole responds, "That means he didn't have enough magic power, right?" Bess replies, "Yes, that's exactly what I mean. Digging a hole to a distant place would require a huge amount of magical energy, and after his injury, he didn't have much energy left. Since the forces have surrounded the entire area, it would be impossible for him to escape unnoticed." Bess and Casserole then realize something, and they are shocked. They both rush back and open the door to the room they were in. They run toward the hole, draw their weapons, and Bess begins speaking, "If you don't know how to escape, come out and we'll try to help you." The man emerges from the hole and tells them, "There's an old saying, do everything you can to convince your enemy that you have retreated, then actually retreat once your enemy leaves the place." The man fully climbs out of the hole and grips his sword, saying to Bess, "You're very smart for figuring out what I did. Looks like the only way for me to escape is to eliminate both of you." Casserole moves to attack him, but Bess says, "Leave him to me." Bess then asks him, "What is your name?" The gang leader replies, "I abandoned my family name long ago, but you can call me Estradel now." He then speaks to himself, thinking about how skilled the boy is and how brave he must be to face him in battle. Estradel then attacks Bess, who grabs his weapon and blocks the strike. Estradel realizes that his sword has broken. Bess then counterattacks, striking him directly in the middle of his head, causing Estradel to collapse to the ground. Casserole quickly restrains and ties him up securely. He then tells Bess, "You're very clever," and picks up Estradel's broken sword. Bess explains that he had copied the cracks from the walls onto the sword, which caused it to break with a single strike. Casserole tells him, "You're very intelligent." Bess, however, looks sad and tells himself, "At this rate, will I ever be able to create the land of sweets I always dreamed of? Or will I always be caught up in these matters with my father?" A month later, we go to the official engagement party of Squall, and we see that everyone in the palace is happy. Squall is sitting next to Petra, and they both look shy. At that moment, Duke Cadlick arrives and thanks Bess and Casserole, shaking their hands. Casserole replies, "Congratulations on the engagement, and thank you for inviting us to this celebration." Cadlick then thanks Bess for protecting Miss Licorice. Bess replies, "It was my duty to protect her." They all glance at Squall, saying that he looks in excellent condition. Cadlick tells them that, contrary to what they think, he is very nervous and even terrified, but he appears fine because he is sitting with his fiancée. Bess then asks the Duke, "There's something I wanted to confirm regarding the incident." He tells him that he noticed strange things about the matter. The Duke is surprised by what Bess says. Bess explains that the gang leader's skill and precision in creating the hole used for the abduction indicate that he was well prepared for the event. Yet, there was only one mistake: he kidnapped the wrong girl. Do you think that happened because he received misleading information about Miss Petra? How did Lemaire have the connections to execute such an operation in the capital with such precision? All of this leads us to something very strange happening. I don't know exactly what it is, but I feel like something is off. In the end, I reached a conclusion that there was a third party involved in the incident. In other words, someone else, greater than all of this, was orchestrating the entire scheme perfectly and overseeing Lemaire's actions in the capital. The Duke is surprised by Bess's words and asks, then who do you think this third party is? Bess replies, surely, the one who benefited the most. That person must have had conflicts with the Lemaire family and also benefited from their downfall. This person also arranged everything so that the operation would fail, ensuring that Lemaire's family had no remaining chance to return to the royal court. The Duke interrupts, enough talking. What I understand from what you're saying is that you're trying to accuse me of being that person. Bess immediately replies, no, I didn't mean you. You know children love stories and tales. The Duke's expression shows tension as he thinks to himself that he underestimated Bess's abilities. He is irritated by Bess's actions and realizes that he has figured out the truth. He considers Bess and his father to be ungrateful. Casserole glances at Bess, signaling him to stop talking. Bess then apologizes to the Duke, saying he didn't mean any offense. Bess then changes the subject, saying, our territory has poor crop yields, and there are some procedures I want to take, but I need some funds to do that. The Duke immediately understands Bess's intent. Bess continues, would be very happy if you could help us out a little. The Duke realizes that Bess is trying to take advantage of him. And what will you do if I don't help you? Bess smirks and replies, maybe my tongue will slip, and I might tell someone about what I discovered. The Duke gets extremely irritated. Bess subtly gestures toward the Margrave and says, I could go and tell him everything that happened. The Duke sighs and says, fine, I'll surrender to your intelligence. I'll help you as much as you request. Casserole is proud of Bess and his cleverness. Bess thanks the Duke for his generosity. The Duke then turns around and says, I'll pretend I'm talking to myself, but listen carefully. He confesses that he saw an opportunity to destroy an opponent to his power and that he gave the order to leak information to encourage Lemaire to attempt the abduction. However, he never intended to put his grandson's fiancée or her sister in any danger. He then admits in front of them that he was behind it all. He expresses regret for putting Miss Licorice at risk and promises Bess and Casserole that this will make him reconsider his actions in the future before taking such steps again. However, he tells Bess, you blackmailed me in an extremely audacious way. That proves that you are a cunning and intelligent child. Bess smirks, I'll pretend I didn't hear that. I'll assume you were just talking to yourself, like you said. At that moment, the Margrave arrives and congratulates them, shaking hands with Casserole, Bess, and the Duke. He then thanks Bess for saving his daughter. Bess replies, it was a great honor for me. The Margrave then asks, have you completed your coming-of-age ceremony yet? Bess responds, yes, I have. The Margrave tells him that he is impressed by his abilities and that many people will admire him in the coming period. He then asks him, is there someone in your heart these days? It seems like he is teasing him about becoming a future husband for his other daughter. Bess is taken aback by his words and replies, no, I'm still a child. I'm not ready for such things. The Margrave responds, I mean, if you find someone, you will eventually settle down with them in the future. Bess sighs, unfortunately, I haven't found the person I want yet. The Margrave then asks, what do you think of my daughter? Bess is completely shocked by what he just heard. Casserole silently hopes that Bess will accept. The Duke is also surprised by the offer given to Bess, but Bess quickly responds, your daughter Petra is already engaged. The Margrave scoffs, stop being foolish. I meant Licorice. He adds, she seems to be quite accepting of the idea as well. Bess then becomes hesitant, nervous, and unsure of how to respond. It's a great honor, but I am not worthy of marrying her. I believe Licorice would prefer a better partner than me. The Margrave is annoyed and says, you just said that you'll settle down with the right person. Does that mean my daughter is not the right person? Bess quickly responds, no, of course not. That's not what I meant. His nervousness is obvious. The Duke, meanwhile, is delighted by the awkward situation Bess has been put into. The Margrave then declares, since you have no objections, you will accept my daughter as your wife. Bess is utterly shocked by his words and replies, I truly respect that Licorice is an amazing person. But the Margrave completely ignores his response and turns to Casserole, asking, is he agreeing or not? Casserole thinks to himself that this is practically a threat, but outwardly, he replies, this would be a great honor for our family. Bess stands there, stunned. The Margrave then calls for his servant and instructs him, gather the family immediately. The Duke then states that he will also gather his own family. And just like that, Bess is trapped, completely and utterly trapped. Everyone starts talking about what's happening, and Bess thinks to himself that his biggest dream was to make cream-filled sweets. He never imagined this path would lead him to marriage. Suddenly, Bess smells a strange scent and realizes it's Licorice's fragrance as she approaches and says, thank you for saving me that day. She asks for his forgiveness for not thanking him earlier. Bess is stunned by her beauty. Then, Margrave Huberic stands and announces that Bess and Licorice will be engaged. He adds, today, I have found partners for both of my daughters at the same time. He continues, the first is Sir Squall and the second is Sir Bess. The entire room erupts in applause. Next, the Duke raises his glass to give a speech for this celebration, saying, the families are not just honored by welcoming new members, but they are also privileged to have taken the great hero, Sir Casserole, into their ranks as well. Squall then steps forward, stands in front of Bess, and says, cheer up, man. We're family now. They shake hands, and Squall adds, from this moment, you can call me your big brother. Petra joins in, saying, and you can call me your big sister too. Bess later finds himself standing alone at sunset, still unable to believe how fast everything happened. Then, Licorice calls out to him and says, I feel like I've disappointed you, like I'm not the ideal bride for you. But Bess replies, don't say that. I'm really happy to have you with me. He reassures her, don't worry, I'll take good care of you. Just then, Licorice's escort arrives and tells Licorice that she made some sweets to celebrate her rescue. Bess opens the bag and finds biscuits inside, overjoyed. He immediately takes one and starts eating it, while Licorice watches eagerly for his reaction. Bess is delighted and exclaims that they taste amazing. Licorice is happy that he liked them. Bess then thinks to himself that he will do his best to protect her, to always make her smile, and to be by her side no matter what. He is certain that he will succeed in achieving his greatest goal. Later, we see Casserole returning home, calling out to his wife, Anise. She asks him, why do you look so worried? Did something happen? Casserole replies, I need you to stay calm and listen carefully. Anise smirks, I already know why you're acting like this. You bought something expensive again and are afraid to tell me, right? He sighs, I'm sorry. Anise is surprised by his reaction and asks, what's wrong? Casserole then says, there's another girl in my life. Anise is completely shocked and doesn't understand what he means. You must be joking, right? Because I am honestly in shock. Casserole quickly adds, I didn't mean it that way. It happened against my will. Anise demands, explain. What happened? Who is this girl? Casserole replies, she's a very charming girl, from a distinguished family. Anise looks at him suspiciously. Charming, huh? Casserole then continues, she also has a twin sister. Anise starts getting angry and begins hitting him. It turns out that Casserole was joking the whole time. He laughs and says, I just wanted to tell you so you wouldn't be upset with me. Anise glares at him, you really think I'd accept something like this, you idiot? Then Casserole drops the real bombshell. Bess agreed to it. Anise is confused. What does Bess have to do with this? At that moment, Bess walks into the room and Anise finally understands what Casserole was talking about. She sighs in relief. I thought you were cheating on me. Bess asks his father, did mom take the news well or not? Casserole replies, she's going to need some time. Bess comments, she looks completely shocked. In reality, Anise is actually happy about it, her eyes shining with excitement. Meanwhile, a servant rushes to Pyrosh and delivers bad news. He informs her that Bess has become engaged to Licorice, the daughter of one of the most powerful families in the country, the family of Margrave Huberic. Pyrosh is completely stunned by the news and accidentally spills her tea, staining her dress. Furious, she throws the cup and demands, how did this happen? How could someone like Margrave Huberic allow his daughter to marry the son of a poor family like Bess? The servant explains, rumors say that after he saved her during the incident, Margrave Huberic arranged this engagement to protect his daughter's honor. And in a few years, once they grow older and people forget about the incident, he will call off the engagement. But Pyrosh isn't convinced. No, I don't think that will happen at all. She believes that he did this to maintain his family's reputation and to prevent people from fearing them or viewing them in a negative light. She concludes, he doesn't want people to think he's arranging purely political marriages like he did with his eldest daughter's engagement to the Duke's grandson. Instead, he deliberately chose Bess as his daughter's fiancée because he sees potential in their territory's future growth. Once that happens, he will reap enormous profits from this connection. The servant protests, but there's no way that their small territory could ever compare to ours. Pyrosh smirks, are you so sure about that? That man took lands that were barren wastelands 20 years ago. For years, they produced no crops. It took years just to grow the first harvest. But over the last 3 years, they reduced their wheat cultivation and started growing beans instead. The servant is puzzled. Beans? Pyrosh explains, they used the beans as fertilizer to enrich the soil. Then, when they planted wheat on that same land, the results were far better than before. The servant is astonished by their intelligence. Pyrosh adds, and all of those ideas came from Bess. The servant scoffs, impossible. That boy is only 9 years old. Pyrosh glares at him, did you forget what he did to us when he came to demand compensation for the bandit attack? He was the one who negotiated with me, not his father, Casserole. And then we head to Lu Malo village in the Mortland domain, where we find Bis walking, carrying a box, and looking happy. His friends stand there, surprised at what he's bringing. He tells them that these are the supplies from Duke Cadeline and Squall and that he made them pledge to provide support. Lumi opens one of the boxes and finds a tree sapling inside. They are all puzzled by it, so Bis explains that it's a black locust tree sapling. Lumi asks if he can make a cake out of it. Bis replies that he can't, and even if she figures out how, she wouldn't be able to eat it. He explains that these trees are easy to grow in poor soil and produce a huge amount of nectar. Mark and Lumi look confused, not understanding what nectar is. Bis clarifies that nectar helps produce large quantities of honey. The two get excited upon hearing the word honey, and Bis is happy too since honey is a key ingredient in sweets. But then, Bis interrupts their excitement by telling them there's a problem with growing these trees. Lumi says she already knows what the issue is. It must be the water and the soil. Bis tells her she's right and continues explaining that rainfall in the Mortland domain is very scarce and that every tree they plant withers before it fully grows and bears fruit. He tells them they need to change their way of thinking and find a reliable water source for the trees. They need to build a reservoir to use for irrigation. Meanwhile, we see Sheets settling the accounts with Casserole. He tells him that the profit from selling textiles reached 8 silver coins after expenses, and wheat sales reached 14 silver and 5 copper. He concludes by saying that this year's total profit is 4 gold and 3/8. Both are thrilled because Casserole's way of thinking is finally bringing in big profits. Casserole is pleased and says, "Finally, we're making a profit." He remembers all the hardships he went through over the past 20 years. Then Sheets tells him that Bis also played a major role in all of this. Casserole starts thanking Sheets, Quantaro, and Glassilk for standing by him the whole time and being a big part of their success. Sheets tells him there's no need to thank him, but he has 2 things to tell him, one piece of good news and one that is somewhat good. Casserole asks him to start with the good news. Sheets tells him that their new village has gathered over 40 new settlers. In other words, people want to move to the village and become its residents. Casserole is shocked by the number. Sheets continues, explaining that most of them are refugees who have nowhere left to go after bandits raided their lands. Casserole acknowledges the situation and says that if there are truly 40 people, they need to continue building the village. He then asks Sheets about the new workers. Sheets tells him that the 5 they hired with rewards are currently being trained by Keslak in everything, including horse riding and combat. Casserole is delighted and says that having more people means the land will flourish and that they won't have any trouble accommodating that number. Then he asks Sheets to tell him the second good piece of news. Sheets leans in and tells him it's actually very serious. He heard that Bis has embarked on a new adventure. Casserole is stunned by this. Sheets continues, saying that he heard Bis went to Lu Malo village with his 2 friends. Casserole is frustrated upon hearing this. Then we switch to the 3 kids standing in front of a mountain, looking shocked. Bis begins using an excavation spell on the mountain, causing Lumi and Mark to be blown away from their spots. Bis manages to carve out a huge hole in the mountain. We learn that he secretly copied Astrodel's magic. He laughs, thrilled by the spell's power, while the other 2 look at him in disbelief. Bis goes back to work, digging in different parts of the mountain until he finally creates a large empty square. Mark and Lumi are amazed at what he's done. Bis then tells them he will plant trees around the reservoir and that it will surely rain soon. The rainwater will collect in the reservoir he built. He starts thinking about all the sweets he'll be able to make once he has honey. He closes his eyes, lost in thought. Lumi and Mark approach him and tell him to open his eyes. When he does, he finds his father and Sheets standing above the square he created. His father looks very upset but is also shocked by what he managed to do. Bis quickly apologizes. His father scolds him, saying, "You're apologizing after what you did? You practically blew up the ground, son." Casserole is furious and moves to hit him. Not just him, but Lumi and Mark as well. Meanwhile, Brios is sitting anxiously, while her servant is nervous and unsure of what to say. He keeps saying pointless things, hoping she will respond. Brios thinks to herself, "If only I had a daughter, would definitely have married her off to Bis." The servant is stunned by her words, but she says that's not the issue. The thing that bothers her the most is that Cadillac and Huberic allied with Casserole and his son as if she were invisible. She had wanted them to talk to her first. The servant tells her, "You should marry Bis yourself." He then immediately apologizes for what he said. said. She responds, if you were 10 years younger or he was 10 years older, that might have worked. She then starts thinking of a way to make Bis listen to her. She lets out an evil laugh and says, I know exactly what I'm going to do. Then we see the villagers standing in front of the water canal that Bis built, and we learn that he made 3 more like it. They are all pleased with its quality and how effective it is. Bis approaches one of the villagers and asks his opinion on what he built. The villager tells him it's excellent. We then see that Bis successfully planted the saplings of the small trees and that things are finally going well. At that moment, his sister arrives and tells him that he has received a letter. Bis is surprised but takes the letter from her. Julie teases him, saying, open it quickly. It might be from your lovely fiancé. Bis opens the letter and reads that Count Riche is inviting him to a tea ceremony. He immediately realizes that Brios is behind this trick and that she invited him to ask his opinion on her new tea. Bis thinks to himself that she must be planning something very cunning. After that, we see the new worker, Nuno, drowning in paperwork assigned to him by Mr. Sheets. Sheets tells him, stop complaining, kid, and finish what you have to do. They continue working on the documents, and Bis overhears them by chance. He tells Sheets that he's wrong in what he's saying, and that everything happening in this domain happens under his father's rule, as he is the feudal lord and the reason behind all these tasks. Sheets tells him, stop twisting things on me. You know who didn't listen and went ahead building reservoirs? Then Sheets tells Nuno, if you want to complain about anything, complain to Bis. After that, Bis asks Sheets about his father. Sheets tells him that he had some work in the capital and went to take care of it but will be back soon. He adds that he wanted to talk to him about something regarding Count Riche's invitation to the tea ceremony. As soon as he finishes his sentence, he realizes that his father is already standing behind him. Casserole says, I already know what you were going to tell me, and I also know about this because I heard about it in the capital. Bis asks him what he thinks she wants. Could it be revenge because I treated her badly during negotiations after the bandit incident? Casserole tells him, let's talk about that later. I brought an important guest with me. Then we see Miss Lycoris entering behind him, and Bis is overjoyed to see her. She tells him she is also happy to see him. We then see Sheets mocking him, saying, she's here to live with you. Next, we see the children playing with stones by the river. Lumi comes running towards them, shouting that she has important news. As soon as she reaches them, she announces that Bis's fiancé is here. They are all shocked that Bis is engaged. Mark says his father had told him about it and that she would be staying here for a while. Lumi tells him that she heard she's a very beautiful woman with a slim figure. Meanwhile, Bis takes Lycoris with him to show her a special place. He opens the door and says, welcome to my dream workshop. Lycoris is delighted when she sees the place. Then we move to Margrave Huberic's castle, where his servant says, I understand why we sent Lady Petrie to the capital to complete her studies, to strengthen the Duke's trust in us. But why did Miss Lycoris go to the Mortland domain? The Margrave replies that he fears Brios's schemes. He continues, saying, it's clear she is playing a game with Bis. His assistant agrees and tells him, it's obvious she noticed the potential of the Mortland domain. The Margrave responds, that's exactly why she invited the boy to the tea ceremony. His assistant then says, I see now why you did this. You sent Miss Lycoris to attend the ceremony with him. The Margrave replies, exactly, because she will have to get close to him while his fiancé is there. However, it seems that the Margrave has no idea just how cunning that woman really is. He then picks up a picture of Lycoris and says, I wish I could have sent her somewhere less dangerous. Meanwhile, Bis and Lycoris are together in his workshop, and she is astonished by the size and scale of the kitchen. She asks him, what exactly do you do here? He tells her that he is making sample gifts to take with him to the party. Lycoris stays with him as he prepares the sweets. She is surprised to see apples in his kitchen and asks about them. Bis tells her that apples are very expensive and that the only place to get them is the capital. That's why he traveled there to buy them. He also had to give up his allowance to get his father's permission to buy apples. Lycoris is delighted by the sweet aroma of Bis's recipe. She tells him that the entire place smells wonderful and gets excited to see what he's making. But he tells her to be patient and she will see for herself. Bis takes the mixture he prepared and pours it into the pan, forming golden circles. He tells her they are called sugar candies. Lycoris tells him they look beautiful and resemble glass. Bis says, now watch the final touch, as he shapes the candies into a cat. He continues shaping others into a dog, a rabbit, and many other figures. When he makes one shaped like a bird, she doesn't recognize it. Bis thinks to himself, they probably don't know what an airplane is in this world. Bis then gives Lycoris some cooking tips. She is completely shocked and doesn't understand anything, but she thinks to herself that he looks very excited. She has seen different expressions on his face before, but this one is the best. She keeps watching him and thinks that he looks cute and innocent. Then Lycoris looks at the figures he made and tells him she doesn't want to ruin their shapes by eating them. He tells her, if you don't eat them, they'll go to waste. They were made to be eaten. At that moment, Lumi, Mark, his mother, and his sister are sneaking around, watching them. Lumi tugs at his mother's dress and tells her, stop spying on them before Bis looks over and catches us. Bis then starts preparing his second recipe. He takes the apples and coats them with the sugar mixture he made. Lycoris is incredibly excited to taste everything. He hands her one and tells her to try it. Lycoris takes a bite, and the moment she tastes it, she is completely stunned. She tells him it's absolutely delicious. But Bis tells her she needs to bite into the apple as well, not just the candy coating. He then explains to her the nutritional value of the sweets he makes, saying that the apple balances out the sweetness of the honey in the candies, creating a perfect harmony in flavor. Lycoris agrees, saying he's absolutely right and that the flavor is even better when she eats the apple plain. Then Bis opens the door, and his mother, sister, and Lumi fall onto the floor in front of him. Bis asks them, what are you all doing here? His mother tells him she was just going downstairs to make tea for his father. They greet Lycoris and then leave, but they leave Mark and Lumi behind with Bis. Bis grabs them and says, you little thieves, you were eavesdropping on me. Later, they all sit down to eat the sweets, but Bis refuses to give any to Mark and Lumi. He tells them, you were spying on me, so no sweets for you. He then tells them he's going to bring the apples to his father and Sheets. Bis's father and Sheets are together, and Sheets tells him that he is very worried about Bis, and that Nuno surely won't be able to look after him there. Casserole replies, I'm not worried about Bis, he'll definitely manage himself there. The issue is that these tea parties are meant to bring together young people from all over the city, and we have no place there because we're old men. He then adds, the one I'm really worried about is Lycoris. Sheets tells him, don't worry, her attendant will be with her and will take good care of her. Sheets continues, the only one I'm worried about is Brios. She's more troublesome than Lycoris. She might try to turn her into the laughingstock of the party. Casserole then looks out of the window and thinks to himself that he is relying on Bis and that he certainly won't let him down. Bis and Lycoris arrive at Brios's castle, and they are both astonished by its grandeur. The attendant tells them that Count Risha's castle is known for its elegance and is also called the Pirate Castle because it is close to the sea. She then advises Bis to stay sharp. Bis apologizes, saying he tends to get lost in thought often. He then looks at the painting he gave as a gift to Brios and realizes that she had it framed and hung on the wall. The servant arrives and welcomes Bis warmly, thanking him for coming. The servant adds that Lady Brios gave him strict instructions regarding Bis. Bis thinks to himself, she must have ordered him to keep an eye on me to make sure I don't do anything wrong. He also realizes that this is the perfect opportunity to promote the services of the Mortland domain. Bis then introduces Lycoris, saying she is his fiancée. Lycoris thanks the servant for the warm welcome, and he introduces himself as Quoten. The servant then announces to all the guests that this gathering was held to welcome a very important guest, Master Bis and his fiancée, Miss Lycoris. Bis introduces himself, saying, I may be just a young boy, but I hope you will treat me with respect. The guests applaud him, and then Bis says, as a token of gratitude, I brought gifts for you all. Nuno carries a jar filled with sweets, and Bis tells them that these candies pair wonderfully with tea. Nuno pours the sweets onto a plate, and Bis invites them to try for themselves. Everyone is amazed by the taste of the candies. Bis explains that he brought only samples as gifts but that he can send more of these sweets through the traveling merchants across the kingdom. The guests are shocked by his generosity. He then tells them they won't have to pay for these, but he has a request that the merchants bringing the sweets should be exempt from taxes. Quoten is surprised by Bis's request, and Bis explains that the taxes on sugary goods are extremely high, making it impossible for struggling merchants to afford them. Since he can only send small amounts at a time, the merchants would bear a huge cost. Brios listens to what Bis is saying and responds, it's a good deal, but we need to discuss it further. She then thanks her guests, and Bis thanks her in return for inviting them to the party. Brios then turns to Bis and asks, is this lovely lady your fiancée? Lycoris bows politely and tells her, it's an honor to meet you. Brios then says, alright, let's talk about the deal you proposed. She continues, I prefer that all commercial affairs go through me first. In other words, don't try to do anything without my approval. Bis replies, I wasn't trying to do anything. I was merely talking about personal gifts. Brios then asks to speak with him in private. She turns to Lycoris and says, sorry, dear, but you'll have to wait here. This matter concerns business between me and the Mortland family. She then instructs Quoten to take care of the guests. Bis reassures Lycoris that he won't take long and follows Brios. Before he leaves, Lycoris grabs his hand and he tells her, "Don't worry." He then asks their attendant and Nuno to look after her. Bis follows Brios, who then tries the sweets and loves them. She agrees to waive taxes, but only on the candies. She thinks to herself, now that I'm helping him, his future is practically in my grasp. Meanwhile, Lycoris feels uneasy because she had assumed she wouldn't be left alone and that Bis would be with her. Brios and Bis return, and as a playful tease, Brios suddenly hugs him from behind. Bis is extremely embarrassed. The problem is that Lycoris witnesses this and becomes deeply upset. Bis quickly frees himself, but Lycoris bursts into tears and runs away. Nuno and the attendant are also stunned by what they just saw. Bis runs after Lycoris, calling her name, but she doesn't hear him. The attendant turns to Bis and says, "What were you doing?" Bis replies, "This is not the time to explain. Just leave Lycoris to me." Brios, on the other hand, is very pleased with herself. Meanwhile, Bis continues running after Lycoris, trying to catch up to her. He exits the castle and sees her standing alone. At that moment, Lycoris is crying. She looks at Bis and apologizes. Bis tries to explain what happened, telling her, "Don't worry, she sees me as nothing more than a 9-year-old boy. She definitely doesn't want anything from me." Lycoris interrupts him, saying, "That's not the only reason." She continues, "Everyone at the party was talking about you, especially the women. They talked about you the most." She then tells him that when she heard their conversations, she started imagining awful things. She adds, "If any of them confess their feelings for you, you won't want me anymore." Lycoris continues crying. Bis tells her, "I would never do that." Lycoris then sits down and talks about her sister. She explains that her sister is very popular and can easily talk to everyone, unlike her. Bis tells her that he loves her and that she is beautiful, even if she doesn't see it herself. He asks her to trust him, and with that, he manages to reconcile with her. Bis then uses his magic to create a special candy apple just for her, engraved with a symbol of his love. Lycoris takes it from him, eats it, and tears up with happiness. Bis tells her that these sweets have many names, but the best ones are Sky Apple and Apple of Love. Then they return home, and everyone welcomes them. Bis's father praises him for successfully completing his first diplomatic mission. His mother welcomes Lycoris and tells Bis, "You have to tell me everything that happened after you made the candies for Lycoris and came back." After that, Bis is exhausted from talking to his mother for 2 hours. Sheets hands him some tea to help him relax. Then Bis notices a piece of paper with a picture of Brios and what she did to him. He asks, "What is this?" Sheets tells him, "This is the wrapping paper for the candies that will be distributed. It's my revenge against Brios for what she did to me and Lycoris." Of course, Brios sees these pictures and gets furious because now people will get a bad impression of her, as the candies will spread all over the kingdom. Then we move to the Margrave's castle, where he is speaking with his servant about how the alliance with the Duke's family has been very beneficial, as now they will lead the army together. They continue discussing the invasion of neighboring lands. We return to Bis and Sheets as they count the money they've gathered recently. Sheets tells him, "You actually reached your goal." Bis takes 4 gold coins for himself, saying he will save them as compensation for the effort he put into making the candies. Sheets tells him, "I don't think the Count will have anything to say about that after all the profits you brought in." Bis then decides to buy 100 goats to use their milk for making sweets. Sheets tells him, "We actually tried raising goats before. They were easy to take care of because they eat everything, but for that same reason, we had to get rid of them since the land was barren at the time. Now, however, the land is very fertile." Bis responds, "Exactly. That means we can raise chickens too and create an animal farm." Sheets excitedly asks, "Does that mean we'll finally get to eat chicken?" Bis gets angry and yells, "What are you talking about? We'll always need more chickens to get eggs. We can't build a proper domain without eggs." Then Bis lets Sheets taste the first sugar he has made. The recipe needs some adjustments, but Bis declares that he will turn Mortland into a candy-producing land. After that, Bis and his friends try to build a mill to grind corn, but the idea fails because the handle is too weak. Then Lycoris suggests the idea of a juice press. Bis gets excited, thanks her, and runs off to his father to request the tools they need. He is very happy, thinking about all the sweets he will be able to make. When he arrives at his father and Sheets, he finds them tense and deep in thought. Bis asks them why they seem so worried. Casserole tells him, the war is about to begin. We then move to the military camp of Loderot, where the domain's ruler stands with the commanders examining a map. The army leader tells him that there have been no reports of reinforcements from the Duke. The Count replies, everything is happening exactly as expected. The rumors about our army having 30,000 soldiers forced Frake to run to the Duke and beg for help. The army leader responds, one of two things must have happened. Either the Duke refused to help or Huberic withdrew his request. The ruler then says, Huberic definitely withdrew his request. The moment he learns that our forces consist of only 10,000 soldiers, he'll want to wipe us out himself to avoid looking weak in front of the Duke. The army leader adds, the Duke will certainly be furious if he does that. The ruler states, I need to eliminate the Duke and rid myself of this grudge I've held for so long. I'm just one step away from destroying him. A soldier arrives and announces, the Margrave's daughter and Squall are in the Margraviate. The ruler is pleased upon hearing this. We return to Bis in his workshop, where Lycoris arrives and asks him, what's wrong? Is something bothering you? Bis replies, don't worry, I'm fine. Lycoris tells him, you must be thinking about the upcoming war. She continues, I heard that the war will be between my family's lands and the neighboring territories. She then says, I must be thinking the same thing as you. War is such a strange thing. I don't understand why people have to kill each other. Instead of war, they could make delicious sweets like you do. She adds, I wish all the men in the world were like you, and I wish I could see everyone in the world happy. Bis tells her that he has the same wish and truly hopes it can come true. He continues passionately, sweets make everyone happy. He declares, the road to happiness is paved with sweets. Bis tells Lycoris, the merchant will bring the goats today. But Lycoris doesn't understand why he even wants goats. Bis explains, with their milk, I can make cheesecakes. Lycoris, confused, asks, what's a cheesecake? Bis reassures her, don't worry, I'll definitely let you taste it. Later, we see Sheets, Casserole, and Bis standing together while Bis yells at the merchant because the goats he ordered were stolen. Bis demands an explanation, and the merchant explains, before I could bring them here, another noble bought all the goats from me. Bis furiously responds, you idiot. That's still considered theft because those goats were meant for me. Sheets adds, if someone forces another person to give up their goods under pressure, that is still called theft. The merchant apologizes again and says he tried multiple times to explain to the noble that the goods had already been sold, but the man insisted and took all the goats by force. The noble told him that the situation in his village was dire and that they would kill him if he didn't hand over the goats. Casserole listens silently. Then he thanks the merchant, saying, thank you for coming all the way here and explaining what happened yourself. Bis asks, who exactly did you sell them to? The merchant answers, to Baron Rons. Bis's expression turns grim, and he mutters, that man is notorious for harassing new noble families. Sheets states, I won't accept this situation. Our family connections with powerful noble houses will be a great advantage to us. We can certainly file a complaint with the capital about this. Casserole responds, we could do that, but unfortunately, Bis's engagement with Lycoris isn't official yet. It would be difficult to ask the Margrave to intervene in this matter. This is clearly happening because of the ongoing war between the two families. Sheet says, if that's the case, then we have no choice but to accept the situation. Casserole agrees, we really have no choice because we received the war declaration 3 days ago. The war will certainly affect trade relations in the region. At that moment, Bis gets extremely angry and yells, I don't care about any of this. I don't care about barons or anything else. Anyone who gets in the way of my happiness, I'll destroy them. He shouts at his father, we can't let these tyrants interfere with the future of the Mortland domain. Casserole tries to calm him down, but Bis refuses and declares, I won't calm down. I'm going to the baron myself right now and telling him exactly what I think of him, and I'm taking back my goats. Casserole calms Bis down, telling him there's an ongoing war and the baron is the closest to it. That's why he has the right to seize provisions from everywhere. But they decide to join the war so they can take the goats from the baron themselves. At the same time, they are supposed to participate in the war because the Margrave is Bis's fiancé's father. Bis wears the war sash and becomes the war strategist, while Casserole is the commander. Everyone thinks Bis is going to support his father in battle. But in reality, Bis is going to take revenge on the baron who took his goats so he can make his sweets. Meanwhile, Squall is at Petrie's house, looking at her pictures, saying, she looks so cute. Petrie gets angry at him for staring at the pictures instead of looking at her when she's right in front of him. Squall makes it up to her, and Petrie becomes very happy with his words. The Margrave arrives and tells Squall, nice job coming up with an excuse for daydreaming so quickly. Squall apologizes and takes Petrie out for a walk. Then the servant enters with information about the enemy army, saying that they have begun moving and that their forces number only 10,000. The Margrave decides to prepare for war without without the Duke's help and assigns Squall to lead the front lines in defense. Petrie is worried, but the Margrave reassures her. Squall thanks the Margrave for trusting him and says that he must start preparing now. Petrie remains anxious, but Squall tells her not to worry, promising to protect her father's lands. We return to the military camp of Plorlet, where the army commander announces that part of the advancing units has reached their borders, and they begin forming battle lines. The army commander is worried about the army's condition and the possibility of losing. The ruler tells him that he has planned everything from the beginning. The real goal of this war is to create a rift between the Duke and the Margrave. The plan is to lure Squall into a trap and eliminate him. This will sever ties between the Duke and the Margrave, which will then trigger the real war. We then go back to the day before the battle. The Margrave welcomes Casserole and Biss. Casserole tells him that he has come to help in the war, while Biss says, "I'm here for the goats." The Margrave is confused by Biss's words, but Biss quickly changes the subject, saying he is ready to offer any assistance to his fiancée's family. The Margrave begins explaining the battle situation, but Biss and Casserole feel that something is off about the enemy's plan. They realize that Squall is walking into a trap and is in serious danger. Casserole and Biss rush to save him. Squall is inspecting his troops and tells his commander to expect an enemy attack at any time and from any direction. One of Squall's soldiers spots enemy troops and rushes to report them. Suddenly, Squall sees enemy soldiers emerging from everywhere, realizing he has walked into an ambush. The enemy soldiers begin overwhelming his forces. Squall decides to retreat into the forest with his remaining troops, but he is shocked to find enemy soldiers coming from the forest as well. He is left with only a handful of soldiers. At that moment, Biss, Casserole, and their men arrive and rescue Squall. Biss says, "We heard you needed some help." Squall thanks them for saving his life but looks around at his fallen soldiers, who died alongside the enemy troops. The enemy commander is shocked by what just happened. He is surprised that Lord Mortlen was in the battle. He becomes even more enraged, realizing that with Lord Mortlen on their side, the Duke will now send reinforcements. The commander turns to the ruler and asks, "Shouldn't we withdraw our forces immediately?" The ruler becomes furious and starts cursing. Squall returns to the castle, where the Margrave checks on him and apologizes for his lack of military insight, admitting that he was very worried about him. He thanks Casserole and Biss for bringing Squall back safely. Casserole and Biss praise Squall's bravery, acknowledging that he fought against the enemy despite being outnumbered. Squall, however, is upset and says that if it weren't for them, he would be dead. The Margrave declares, "Now is the time to celebrate our victory, especially the success of Squall's first military deployment." But Squall, still troubled, says, "I don't deserve this celebration." The Margrave tells him to rest for now. As Squall prepares to leave, Petrie comes to check on him. He tells her, "Don't worry, these are just a few scratches. They won't affect me at all." She tells him she's happy that he's safe. However, Squall is still troubled and exhausted. He tells her they'll talk later and, as he leaves, asks her not to knock on his door or visit him for now. The Margrave expresses his concern for Squall. Casserole reassures him, saying that's natural after his first battle. It's good that he experienced this now because he'll be leading much larger forces in the future. Casserole then asks Biss to help lift Squall's spirits since they are close in age. Petrie pleads with Biss to support her fiancé. Biss thinks of a way to cheer up Squall and remembers what Lycoris once told him, "Sweets make everyone feel better." At that moment, Biss's eyes light up, and Casserole realizes that Biss has come up with an idea. Biss prepares a delicious new apple-based dessert for Squall and presents it to him at the celebration. As soon as Nuno removes the cover, the sweet aroma spreads throughout the entire room, leaving everyone amazed by its scent. Biss takes a piece and offers it to Squall. Squall asks, "What is this dessert called?" Biss replies, "This is tart tatin." Squall is puzzled by the name. Biss explains, "It's a baked pastry made with apples." He adds that he made it especially for him. Squall takes a bite and is immediately astonished by its incredible taste. Biss then begins explaining how he made the dessert. Afterward, Petrie arrives, thanks Biss, and takes Squall outside with her, carrying 2 pieces of the dessert. Meanwhile, Casserole and the Margrave observe Squall from inside. The Margrave comments that the shock of one's first battle is always difficult, and that they all went through this stage in their youth. Biss says, "I've been through all of that in my youth too." The 2 men are confused by his statement. The Margrave thanks Biss and tells him, "If you ever need anything, I hope you'll ask me directly." Biss is pleased to hear this and starts thinking about what he could request. Then an idea comes to mind, something he truly needs. Biss returns with a massive amount of storage crates, leaving Lumi and Mark stunned by the sheer quantity he brought back. Bis tells them this is a token of gratitude from the Margrave. He also brings a letter for Lycoris from her father. Sheets informs Bis that Casserole went to the Baron to negotiate an agreement and retrieve the livestock. Indeed, Casserole successfully takes all the goats and even the specially trained horses from the Baron's estate under the pretext that they participated in the war. Sheets is left terrified by the cunning plan devised by Bis and Casserole.